one of the great activists on social media. He's an international human rights lawyer, Arsen Ostrovsky. When I asked him to be one of our partners and support this event, he was there immediately. He said, Hineni, he's the executive director of the Israeli Jewish Congress, someone who's recognized as one of the great warriors on Twitter for equal rights for Israel. With no further ado, I bring to you Arsen Ostrovsky.
Thank you, Hillel. You know, there's a reason they call Hillel the most hated man in the United Nations. It's true. Because he has the courage to speak up, to call out the tyrants, the dictators, and the hypocrisy against Israel. Thank you, Hillel, for all that you do inside, and for everyone here today. Thank you. It's truly an honor for me to be here today on behalf of the Israeli Jewish Congress, with so many of my distinguished colleagues, friends, acquaintances, and especially all of you here today that have come from all across Europe and many from Israel. Each and every one of you, each and every one gathered here today is a testament that Israel has supporters, that we have friends. Each one of you here right now have come here together to say loudly, clearly, and without reservation, enough is enough. That we will not stay silent, that we will not acquiesce, that we will never be indifferent in the face of this relentless, pathological, and anti-Semitic assault against the one and only Jewish state. Enough is enough. I've come here today from Israel, from my hometown, Tel Aviv. As many of you, I'm sure, heard a few days ago on Thursday, there were rockets fired in Tel Aviv. It was just after 9 p.m. I just put my 2-year-old daughter to sleep. My wife had gone out. I heard, as many I'm sure you here have as well, the piercing sound of the Tzeva Adom, the red alert. I have 15, maybe 30 seconds to find shelter, and we live in an upper floor. I don't know if there's a rocket coming. There is no time to wake your child and to reach a safe space. What do? I ask the member nations of the Human Rights Council, what would they do? But you know what? I'm not the only one faced with that life and death situation on a daily basis, as many of our fellow citizens in the south of Israel are. For hundreds and thousands of Israelis, this is an almost daily reality. Just yesterday, 19-year-old Israeli Gal Kaidan was murdered by Palestinian terrorists outside Ariel. After he stabbed Gal, he then stole his gun, hijacked the vehicle before shooting a group of people. Earlier today, one of the victims passed away, Rabbi Echiad Ettinger. He was a father of 12. There were 2 victims from that attack. The terrorists that killed them will now almost certainly receive a pension for life from the Palestinian Authority. But you know what Hamas did in Gaza after? They handed out candy and sweets in celebration. Imagine for a second if someone did that after the New Zealand massacre a few days ago. Imagine the outrage over this vile, evil act. Gal was barely a teenager. Rabbi Ettinger was a father of 12. This is them. Look at them in the eyes, I say to the UN Human Rights Council. Look at them in the eyes. For their blood is on your hands. For when you turn your back, when you try to silence us, when you glorify their killers, you become an accomplice to Hamas and Palestinian terrorism. This council, whose very mission is supposed to be the promotion and protection of all human rights around the world, does not care about people like Gal or Rabbi Ettinger. It doesn't care about our human rights, the rights of Israelis or Jews. No, instead today, as we gather out here, inside there, they are discussing and they will pass an unprecedented number of resolutions condemning us for supposed war crimes, for crimes against humanity, while entirely absolving the Hamas. And for what? For what? For having the audacity to defend ourselves against this vicious, genocidal, terrorist organization that orchestrated these violent riots, that scorched our land, and most sickeningly of all, sends their children to the front lines as human shields, as cover for their own terrorist acts. If you don't believe me, Just listen to the words of Yahya Sinwar, the leader of Hamas, who said this ahead of the Gaza riots, and I quote, "We will take down the border and we will tear out their hearts from their bodies," he said. Only in a perverse Orwellian world of these United Nations is that considered a peaceful protester. When the US withdrew from the Human Rights Council last year, Nikki Haley said it had become a cesspool of political bias. And you know what? She was right. How else would you describe the absurdity where inside this council today they're discussing not human rights abuses in Iran, Syria, Saudi Arabia, China, Cuba, Turkey, or Venezuela. No, heaven forbid, but Israel. Or where the council devotes a permanent agenda item, this insidious item 7, solely to the Jewish state, and then a mere other item to the rest of the world combined. Or the peak of absurdity where this council has condemned Israel, a shining beacon of freedom, democracy, human rights and liberty more times than the entire world put together. Well, if it looks like a duck, walks like a duck, and quacks like a duck, then yeah, it's probably anti-Semitic. You know, this council was created in the wake of the discredited predecessor Human Rights Commission. It was meant to usher in the dawn of a new era where the persecuted would finally have a voice and the persecutors shunned, denied their impunity and finally held to account. But 13 years later, what has happened of it? It has become a miserable failure, foregoing even the smallest of pretext of acting as an objective guardian of human rights or upholding its own values. Instead, this gang of terrorists, tyrants, dictators and murderers continues to make a complete mockery of democracies while shielding each other and denying justice to their victims. We have come here today together, all of us, to say that we will not stand by as the state of Israel is repeatedly and relentlessly singled out, while those who seek our destruction are absolved of responsibility and rewarded for their actions. We will never apologize for defending our borders, our children, our people. And because those of us here today care about basic human rights, equal rights, decency and democracy, we will demand enough is enough. I will conclude with just these words. In 2 days' time, the Jewish people will be celebrating the joyous holiday of Purim, where we celebrate our survival from annihilation and submission by the evil ruler Haman. Well, today, this very council behind us might be the modern-day Haman, but we have regained our voice, our sovereignty and our independence, and we shall never submit, we shall never stay silent, and we will always speak out for the one and only Jewish state. Enough is enough. Thank you.